I'm Roger Grant's KnowBe4. If you haven't met me before, I speak really fast all the time. I've been doing computer security for 34 years, earned all the gray hairs, written 13 books, and now probably close to 1,200 magazine articles. There's some of my books. The most recent one is Ransomware Protection Playbook. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest integrated security awareness and simulated phishing platform vendor. That just means we try to help people not to be phished, which this is a big part of it. So somewhere between 70 and 90% of all successful exploitation involves social engineering and phishing. So it's the number one problem, root cause exploit method by far, followed by unpatched software, which is about 20 to 40%, and then password issues are around 15%. But teaching yourself, your friends, your coworkers how not to be phished is one of the best things any organization can do. The biggest part of that is probably just teaching people how to read a URL, uniform resource locator link, and trying to figure out what is the real domain name. So if an email or a website appears and says that it's from KnowBe4 or Microsoft or Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whoever, is it really from that person? That is a skill that probably most of y'all already know, but you can use this slide deck. Anybody can download the slide deck to teach it to other people, because we know that there is a big difference between these three URL examples about where they're going to go. Where the periods are, where a forward slash is, and that sort of stuff really changes whether or not you're going to domain.com or example.com or example.com.domain. Those are all three different domains that look very much the same. And a lot of end users don't know how to read a URL to know the difference. Certainly probably the biggest phishing, bad guy phishing thing is that they'll try to misspell, a legitimate domain somehow. You can actually, if you want to, go to our website, download a free tool called Domain Doppelganger, put in your organization's domain name, and it will list all of the currently registered domains that are around your domain name. And there's an open source tool that kind of does the same thing, but I think ours is has prettier formatting and all the like. But you can see that a lot of these domains for our particular domain, they're sound alike, look alike, typo squatting, look alike domains. And a lot of people might miss the difference between knowbe4.com and knowsbefore.com or knoweb4.com, right? And it can be difficult even for an organization, once you learn that somebody is typo squatting on your domain, to go get that domain shut down. You've got to prove that they've done so maliciously, that they're trying to get traffic and legitimate users headed to your website going to their website. So again, this is a very common trick, and we'll see an example of it in just a little while. But this is certainly another common trick where, let's say, PayPal, although today it was announced by our company, the most faked brand name is DHL. The delivery company like FedExpress, you'll get a spam email or message saying, we tried to deliver a package to your door, but you weren't there. And they'll have some link. Usually it's a short message link that then goes to some other link. But they'll many times the phishers will try to confuse receivers, potential victims, with domain names that look similar to it. Here's a good example of one: paypal.com.bank. So the underlying top level root domain really is bank, right? And somebody was able to trick the top level domain registrar at the time to giving them a paypal.com higher level thing under bank. And so that, many end users would be confused thinking that had to do, that's PayPal, but it's not. Or here's another example of a phishing email I got that was trying to claim to be from Microsoft, right? So it's saying, I guess they're hoping that people would think that this was Microsoft.com, but really, again, the top level domain name is info, and has this other long Microsoft co login update.info. But again, a lot of end users not really knowing the difference might see, oh, it's Microsoft in the login name, and think that they're going to Microsoft.com. Or here's another example of one I got a bunch of years ago that was claiming to be Bank of America, but it was bankofamerica.doc.com, which is not the same as Bank of America. .com, right? But again, a lot of people wouldn't know that. And the .com top level domain probably thought nothing of giving somebody a parent domain of Bank of America.doc.com, or maybe they just didn't have automated tools to kind of fish that out. Here's another one claiming to be PayPal, right? They said, oh, security-paypal-centers.com. It's not paypal.com for sure. It's PayPal Centers. And, a lot of people might see this and think, oh, this is really PayPal's website, but it's nothing close to PayPal's website. Although it certainly doesn't help when, PayPal or Bank of America, something gets something close to it. But these days, most of the brand names are pretty good about not deviating from, Microsoft.com, Facebook.com, Bank of America.com, that sort of stuff. Here's another example, x-paypal.com, not PayPal.com. Here's another one, another common thing we see usually see this on social media, where people are trying to claim that somebody needs help and there's a reward, and they made the URL at the bottom of the screen here. They're like, hey, go see if you recognize this license plate and you can get a reward. And they put CNN in the link name, but really ultimately the domain name is wixsite.com, right? And those of us that know Wix is a very popular web hosting company where you can set up your own websites, and they offer free websites and free trials. And so spammers and phishers will often set those up. But again, people will see CNN news alert and somehow think that it really is, going to CNN, but it's not, right? It just has the letters, the name, or the brand name in the URL. Here's another one, a real email one of our customers got. I guess we could say that we should feel flattered, but the Fisher sent a training reminder email, which is something that our product does, to some KnowBe4 users, saying that they had to take training. And this is actually not too different than what our real email looks like, but the URL, it was interesting. It had, the URL was KnowBe4.com. So the real domain name here is e4.com. And actually, if the end user had hovered over the URL, they'd see that it really would take them to something called turboboulder.ru. So it would take them to Russia. We don't have any offices or clients in Russia. So this is obviously to us, not from us. But you need to teach end users to hover, and to read those. You are literally just get in the, the habit of never click on a link unless you hover first and read it and confirm that the brand name URL is correct. Here's another example, where this particular phishing email was supposed to look like it was coming from Microsoft or Microsoft Outlook, but really it was coming from a domain that the phishers had registered called Outlook, but it kind of looks like Outlook.com. And let me say, a lot of phisher people will send emails from Outlook, the real Outlook.com. So the real domain would say Outlook.com, or it would say MicrosoftOnline.com, but they'll have the email address of, to be like PayPal security at Outlook.com or something. So again, trying to confuse people. Here's another example I got quite a while ago, I remember, but it was claiming to be this Microsoft Office 365 thing, and that my subscription had expired, and I had to go find out what the problem was. But when I hovered over the URL, it was going to a domain name called devopsnw.com. But you can see in the URL, it has microsoftonline.com, right? Well, that login.microsoft.online.com really is nothing but probably what's called a virtual name that's on the malicious server at devopsnw.com. But people that don't know how to read URLs might think that that's part of the domain name where this thing's going to go, but it's not. It's devopsnw.com. And when I got this, I went and then did a whois lookup on, I think it's MX lookup or something. But anyways, you do a whois lookup on that domain name and see, is it registered to Microsoft or not? And in this case, it certainly was not registered to Microsoft. And so I knew for sure that it was bad. Here's an email one of our clients got recently that claimed to be from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services about COVID. And this is really common in phishing emails, right? But when you go look or hover over the links, when I hover over the link in the email, It said it was going to take me to, blog qassure.com, some French place. And at the very top, it had some domain name of gmx.com and had a completely different name where it was going to go to. So it wasn't humanservices.gov. It really was this Despina Larantia gmx.com. So when you see these domain mismatches, you know for sure that phishing email. Here's another example. This was actually an example from Kevin Mitnick, our chief hacking officer. He created a demo showing this where it looked like a LinkedIn email, but if you hovered over the button, it wasn't linkedin.com, it was LLLinkedin.com. He actually was able to register that domain and keep it for a couple of weeks before Microsoft finally shut it down. But the reason why he did this one, we actually saw one from LLLinkedin.ni for Nigeria. So there are a lot of people will use LinkedIn.com, or sometimes they misspell it. They'll say LL LinkedIn, or they'll do L LinkedIn without the I in there, and going to different country codes, Nigeria, Russia, or whatever. Very, very common. Also, be wary of any email that claims to come from a big company like Microsoft or Facebook or Twitter or whatever that is not coming from their domain. Like in this case, I was getting an email claiming from Maersk, however you say that, the world's largest shipping and container company, telling me that I needed to respond for a shipping invoice that needed to be paid. But looking at it, I could see that it was coming from onlinealex.com.pl from Poland. I don't know whether Maersk has offices in Poland, but I just know that if one of the world's largest companies is sending me an email, that it's going to come from Maersk.com. It's not going to come from this onlinealex.com.pl. But we certainly do see a lot of emails that claim to be from major companies that come from hotmail.com, gmail.com, onmicrosoft.com, that sort of stuff. And you just, big companies don't need to come from generic email addresses or strange, weird email addresses. We do see a lot of people, a lot of fake email addresses that are represented by percent encoding. So that's where they choose the hexadecimal digits of the ASCII codes that represent those letters. So this is really KnowBe4.com, but they'll represent it with some other character set. You can have different character sets that represent different letters that send people to websites. So sometimes when you're trying to figure out what a website is, you may not, be able to tell because it's been encoded in some way that the browser still recognizes and converts. Probably a more problematic issue today is what's called homographic attacks, homography attacks, homoglyph attacks. But it turns out that there's like 1 million different Unicode characters that represent every language in the world. And attackers will sometimes register URLs that look like a common URL, but they're actually using foreign language characters that look like identically. For example, the Unicode Latin A, so that's what we in America and the US would type in, A. It would look, you could actually replace that with a Cyrillic A, which is a completely different hexadecimal code and would take you to a completely different website, even though it looks the same. And the first time we saw this was an example where someone figured out this was a possible attack in 2017, and they sent out as a demo. They were announcing a research paper about this, but they sent out a demo where this URL looked like apple.com. It was even signed, had a SSL TLS certificate on it, secure connection. But when you clicked on it, it didn't take you from apple.com. It would take you to this Chinese website or wherever the website was. And they did a couple of other examples of it, again, replacing the Latin letters with Cyrillic letters that actually looked identical. But to the browser and the operating systems, they are different things and take you different places. This was kind of a theoretical attack until this year, Microsoft reported that they found 18 domains that used this sort of attack that tried to redirect people to fake websites. So this is a real thing that people have to watch out for. Sometimes real legitimate URLs will allow redirection to other websites. Like there was an email that came out from adobe.com, and the attackers learned that if they did this P1 variable, they could add whatever was in P1 would then take you somewhere else. So Adobe had included this P1 variable so that they could redirect you to some Adobe website or some partner of Adobe. But attackers learned, hey, they could put in their own URL in there and take you to a bad place. So they could send out emails that look like they're coming from adobe.com. And if I was a sophisticated viewer of URLs, I'd go, okay, this is adobe.com. It's going to adobe.com. Roger said to look at the domain name, and it's taking me to adobe.com, but not knowing that they had replaced and had to redirect. And so what you would do if you clicked on this is your browser would go to adobe.com, and then adobe.com's website would then redirect you whatever was into the P1 variable. And attackers, phishers use that. And that's actually pretty common. When attackers find this. Here's another example where the attackers found the real Google Russia website. If you're in Russia, when you use Google, it's Google RU. If you're in China, it's google.cu. Different countries have different, they don't go to google.com. But in the Russian real Google website, they learned anything after the pound, BT, NL, and Q, whatever happened to be there would be the redirection website. So they could make you think that you're going to Google real, but really you're being redirected to a fake Google website. And in that case, they encoded the website using character encoding of some sort, so that it'd be tougher to figure out you're going somewhere else. Or here's a really good example. This is a fake UPS website. So an email came, phishing email, claiming to be, hey, you need to, pick up we tried to deliver your package and it wouldn't deliver. And if you hovered over the email, it would say ups.com. So you're thinking, okay, this is great. This is going to take me to ups.com. But really what they had is on error, that function ATOB. What that was that the attackers would drop you off at ups.com, but UPS said, if you get delivered to a web page that doesn't exist or has an error, on error, head here. And what Adobe had meant is that they would drop you off at some screen. It goes, I'm sorry, your URL that you requested doesn't exist. Do you really want to go somewhere else? And so that's what UPS intended. But attackers learned that they could replace the website with their website and then redirect people somewhere completely different. In this case, it was like m-amazon.workers. whatever. So just realize that even sometimes if the URL appears real, there might be a redirection attack sending you somewhere else, and they can be tough. Like here's some other examples. In that second example, it's a tough one there. You're going to what looks like login.microsoftonline.com or something like that, but you see there's a redirect in there. And so, it can be encoded and you don't know where you're going. So in general, if, pay attention, if the web domain changes on you and goes to somewhere weird, start to be suspicious. So again, in ending, the most important skill to fight phishing, there's lots of skills and lots of education, but one of the best things you can do is try to teach yourself, your friends, your family, your coworkers, how to spot the real DNS domain and some of these other tricks. Give them education, tell them to always hover before they click, speed, kills, slow down. That's the biggest lesson I had to learn: slow down, make sure I hover, investigate or ignore suspicious links, stay patched so they can't do a silent drive-by download. And if you're not sure, you can execute suspicious URLs in a safe forensics virtual machine where they can't do any harm, or you can even submit the suspicious URL to a malware inspection service. Usually your antivirus provider has that, or if you don't have any, you can submit it to virustotal.com. Those are ways to go about it. At KnowBe4, we're very big believers in that you should give people training on this sort of stuff and do simulated phishing tests at least once a month. And if you do that, we know that the average company will go from above 30% of their people that will be phished to under 5% in less than a year. With that said, my time is up. I want to thank you all for giving me 20 minutes and thank Ron and look forward to the rest of the day. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbe4.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter.